Hi everyone, it's Kute here, sending you love. Today's video blog is about how do you overcome the sense of feeling guilty. How do you overcome this thing called guilt? At some point in your life, likely you have felt guilty. Maybe you're feeling guilty right now. Maybe you're feeling guilty for watching this video when in fact you should be working, you should be exercising, you should be doing something other than you're doing. We have all sorts of reasons for feeling this feeling of guilt. The guilt that we're not working hard enough, the guilt that we're too wealthy, the guilt that we're too poor, the guilt that we're too skinny, we're too beautiful, we're too spiritual. There's so many reasons that we feel guilty, and if we're not careful, it just can eat us up inside and create a feeling of self-hate, a feeling of shame, a feeling of not feeling enough. If we don't get a handle and a grip on the sense of guilt, it can hijack your joy, it can hijack your freedom, it can hijack your sense of feeling alive and happy in your life. We've all felt guilt at some point. Guilt for what we've said, guilt for what we've done to other people, guilt for disappointing those in our lives. We've all felt it as human beings, as part of the range of experiences that we go through and feelings that we feel as human beings. There's healthy guilt. The healthy guilt is, if you punch someone in the face for no reason, or if you steal some money, there's a kind of healthy sense of guilt, that's a calibration, that's a signal that maybe you're a little off course. But if you're able to acknowledge that signal and bring yourself back in course, if you're able to acknowledge that signal and course correct and take a different action, then the guilt will often fall away. So it can serve in a healthy way as a sense of awareness that you're maybe veering off a little bit from your own heart's integrity. But then there's that unhealthy guilt, where you're feeling guilty when you don't really need to. You're feeling guilty because maybe you didn't buy someone something and it's not your right. You're feeling guilty because you didn't call someone or do something, and really it's not your responsibility. So there's the healthy guilt, there's the unhealthy guilt, and part of the wisdom is discerning between the two. So we all felt guilty. As growing up, one of the reasons I felt guilty was the sense of, my father's a minister. We have 300 churches in Ghana, West Africa. Age 8, I started speaking in my father's audiences. 14, I was ordained as a minister with high hopes and given the mandate to take over the entire operation. Hundreds of thousands of people pinning their hopes on me, having expectations and really wanting me to take over. There was a lot of pressure, a lot of responsibility. When I was 14, I knew that wasn't my destiny to take over my father's churches. I had this sense, and I knew that wasn't my path. Yet I felt guilty because I didn't want to disappoint my father. I felt guilty because I wanted his love. I felt guilty, and many of us, I feel, out of the sense of guilt, out of the sense of kind of over-responsibility to our tribe, to our family, to a relationship, to our spouses, to those in our lives, to our children, we make decisions that aren't always truly in alignment with our knowing, that aren't always in alignment with our true essence, and we end up compromising ourselves, we end up disconnecting from ourselves, we end up betraying ourselves so that we don't disappoint other people. But if you betray yourself in order to not disappoint someone else, you will inevitably end up either sick or resentful or remorseful, and eventually you set yourself up to be betrayed when you betray yourself. This thing of guilt can be so powerful. Maybe you're carrying some guilt in your life as to feeling like you made a mistake. And one thing I've seen working with clients from all walks of life is this observation that many of us, when we do something and then we judge ourselves, and we often judge ourselves so harshly because of what we thought we did, what we thought we should have done, the pain we feel we caused someone else, the mistake we feel that we made. We judge ourselves, somehow feeling that if I torture myself enough, if I punish myself enough, that punishment, that torture will somehow absolve me of what I did. And then I don't have to feel guilty anymore. But it just creates a cycle. What I want you to really get is judging yourself about what you did do or didn't do or could have done to someone or out there in the world. Judging yourself just reinforces the very sense of guilt, just reinforces the very pattern that you're trying to shift. It's a complete waste of time. What you have to remember, my friends, is what's done is done. You can't change the past. You can't change what happened. It's already done. No matter how much you guilt yourself and judge yourself and beat yourself up, it's gone. It's done. You can't change it. So you have to make peace with the fact that that's no longer in your control. What's in your control is this moment and the actions that you take now. Yes, you may have done that. It needs to be acknowledged. Acknowledge what you did. Acknowledge how you feel. But what you also have to acknowledge is that you are a human being. And as a human being, you are not perfect. As a human being, part of being human is you will learn mistakes. As a human being, you and I, we incarnate into this human experience. Souls incarnate into this human experience because you and I, we have certain lessons to learn in this life. We all have things we're working through. Each of us, even the great ones, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, the great sages, the great saints, the great mystics, each had their Achilles heel. Each had their own unique life lessons that their personalities were working through. Somehow we think if we're on the spiritual path, I'll never make a mistake. If we're on the spiritual path, I'll never hurt anyone. If I'm on the spiritual path, I'll never screw up. And that's not the case. As human beings, the personality is not perfect. We're here to learn, we're here to grow, we're here to evolve, and often how we learn, grow, and evolve is through relationship. How we learn, grow, and evolve is through the process of learning of making mistakes. But I believe if you really adopt the evolutionary perspective of life, you realize that there are really no mistakes. They're learning opportunities, and there are opportunities to get feedback from the universe as to what's working and what's not working, and to be in a continual process of course correcting yourself so that you can bring yourself into alignment. So sometimes your guilt can be a blessing to help you course correct. Oh, I feel a little off, I feel guilty about what I said, what I did, how I showed up. Let me bring myself back. That feels good. So don't judge your guilt, use your guilt as a feedback mechanism. What I've observed that sometimes people do is we often indulge our guilt. Oh, I feel guilty, I feel guilty, I feel guilty. Sometimes indulging your guilt is actually a cop-out. Because when you just indulge your guilt, guess what? You don't actually have to do anything about making a change in your action today. You're just busy, indulging your guilt, feeling bad about yourself. Woe is me, oh my God, I'm a bad person, Rather than indulging your guilt, one thing I found is really powerful is to actually stop indulging your guilt and take responsibility. When we take responsibility for ourselves, there's no more time to indulge your guilt. And when you're willing to give that up, it forces you to take responsibility for who you are being this moment and how you're showing up in this very moment right now. So give up the self-punishment, give up the self-blame, give up the guilt. It serves no one. You might have hurt someone, you might have disappointed someone. I had to risk disappointing my father. But what I had to make peace with was I knew if I simply followed his expectations for my life, everyone around me, expectations for my life, I would be completely miserable. I knew that if I followed his path and his hopes and dreams for me, he might be happy, but my soul would die. My soul would die, and eventually I'd be of no use to anyone. So if you're living someone else's life, just know you're not doing the world or anyone else a favor, because perhaps the greatest gift you can give humanity is not what you do, but it's who you're being. The greatest gift you can give humanity is the gift of being authentically yourself. This is the gift, my friends. So give up the guilt and set yourself free. Set yourself free because you hold the lock and you hold the key. One of the key ways to set yourself free is the willingness, the radical willingness to meet yourself with compassion. Sounds simple, but not always easy when we're wound up in guilt. It can be easy, like eating potato chips, to just judge yourself. Eat another chip, eat another chip, eat another chip. It can become addictive. But to meet yourself with compassion is part of the key that sets you free. The willingness to forgive yourself for what you did, for what you didn't do. The willingness to give up judging yourself and meet yourself with that layer of self-forgiveness, recognizing that you are a human being. And as a human being, you learn through experiences and you will make mistakes. What's important is not that you make a mistake or not. What's important is that you learn the lesson so that you don't keep repeating those mistakes over and 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 over again. So be willing to bring compassion to yourself, recognize your humanity, meet yourself with gentleness, meet yourself with kindness. So long as you know that you're learning your lesson, so long as you know that in this very moment you are doing the best that you can. And in that recognition of maybe you will laugh if there are people in your life you need to make amends with, if there are people in your life you need to speak to, check in with, apologize to directly, take ownership and responsibility and face consequences for whatever that is to come in integrity, then have those conversations. Have those conversations, clean up whatever you might need to clean up, but do so with compassion in your heart. Do so with that sense of gentleness, with that sense of understanding and gracefulness for being human. It's not easy to be human, my friends. It takes a lot of courage to be willing to incarnate into this human experience with its emotions, with its ups, its downs, with the messiness of life and relationships. It takes courage to be human. And you have chosen to be here at this time in a human body that is sometimes imperfect to learn lessons. You've chosen to be here, and that says so much about who you are. That alone deserves your love and your compassion. Meet yourself with unconditional love. God loves you. Life loves you. Now it's an opportunity for you to love yourself no matter what. Remember, you hold the key to set yourself free. Release yourself from the guilt so that you can give your gifts to the world and shine your light. Sending you love wherever you are, everyone. If you enjoyed this video blog, I invite you to subscribe for some free gifts that you'll be getting in the upcoming weeks. Share this with all your friends. Sending you big love now.